Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for Stage One Family Theater's inaugural Theater for Everywhere Artist Panel, exploring making theater for young audiences during the pandemic. I'm Debra Fendrich from Pioneer Drama Service, and I'll be joined in tonight's conversations by Dramaturg Dr. Janna Segal and Playwrights Clara Harris, Jada Dixon, and Keith McGill. Before we begin, we acknowledge with respect as a non-native persons that the lands on which we stand, live, and learn are the traditional territory of the Ute Cheyenne and the Arapaho peoples, in my case and Jada's. And for the Stage One folks in Louisville, we acknowledge that Indigenous peoples have always called this land home and continue today. The place we call Kentucky is primarily Shawnee, Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Osage land. Playwrights, will you join me now? I'll have you introduce yourselves, including what you do and your role in the Theater for Everywhere series.
Well, hello, my name is Clara Harris. I wrote Monster of Mine for Theater for Everywhere, and I'm an actor and writer, and actually I have an audio drama podcast for which I act and write and teach acting on the side for high schoolers who are getting ready for their college auditions.
Great, thank you. Keith, how about you?
Hi, I'm Keith McGill. I'm an actor, director, playwright, stand-up comedian. So if you're in Indianapolis this weekend or in Louisville next weekend, come on out and I'll try to make 7 or 8 of you laugh at a time. I do all I can. And for this particular program, Theater for Everywhere, I wrote The Right Shoes and I directed Monster of Mine.
Great. Jada?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jada Suzanne Dixon, and I am an actor, a director, a teaching artist, and early career playwright, and had the true pleasure of being the playwright of Reframe in the Theater for Everywhere series.
Wonderful. And Janna?
Hi, I'm Janna Segal, and I am an assistant professor of theater arts at the University of Louisville, and I was the dramaturg on the Theater for Everywhere series, and I'm also a freelance dramaturg, so feel free to hire me for any of your playwriting needs.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's jump right in with some questions. I'm curious, how did you all decide what to write? And did you choose your own topics? So Keith, why don't you start us off?
I knew that I was writing about that sort of age where kids are friends, like maybe late elementary school or somewhat, where kids are fast friends forever. And then the next day it's like, yeah, we're not friends anymore. And the difficult part is when you still want to be friends and the other person is no longer your friend, at least not today. And so figuring out the dynamics of that. So I knew it was a triangle. It had to be somebody caught in the middle, somebody who was great friends. And what happened was I ended up writing my own experience. I ended up writing about what it felt like to not understand why I'm not friends with you anymore. What did I do, or not knowing necessarily what happened that we weren't friends anymore. So it just fell out. I got really lucky.
Great. Jada, how about you?
One of the great things that Stage One Family Theater did for us in the very early part of the writing journey was helped us have some understanding of what the needs were and kind of identify these key areas or key focus areas that were important to the school districts. And from there, we were able to start brainstorming, you know, what could it look like and what was important to us. I don't believe that I necessarily chose my topic. I think my topic chose me. It showed up in my world in a variety of different ways. And it wasn't until I decided to lean into that that it was able to kind of flow freely.
Great. Clara?
Well, as we began the writing process, I was also completing my training for 500-hour certification for a yoga teacher. And so I was in the midst of a lot of study on the mind-body connection and helping adults in the yoga room deal with big emotions and the ways that yoga, mindfulness, and meditation can assist everybody, but primarily adults is who I teach for yoga, dealing with these big emotions. How do we cope with these things in our everyday life, and how can we practice that on the yoga mat? So because I was going through all of these things, as we were talking about the topics that really resonated with the school, that Stage 1 and the school systems had kind of worked together to develop, this idea of coping with big feelings just kept coming back as something that it just was kind of a no-brainer to choose as the topic that I requested to write on, because I was so much in the mindset of how do we cope with these big feelings. And it also just was a very visual, as I thought about how to tell the story, very quickly kind of got to this very visual idea of these monsters sort of descending on you and how that feels. And you can see a picture here on the screen. So it all kind of came together, both what I was studying and then as I was sort of visioning how might I approach each of these topics. This one just sort of divine inspiration, the lightning bolt struck in some ways. And then there was a lot of slogging after that divine inspiration to get the script done.
I'm sure. Well, you all wrote these plays early in the pandemic year, just in the first 3 or 4 months. How did that environment impact the way you wrote? Jada, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all recognize that 2020 was a heck of a year. Not only were we navigating through a pandemic and working remotely and, teaching from home for our own children and others, I think we also saw a kind of heightened awareness in our face of some of the social injustices. And so for me, it was also around thinking, gosh, this is impacting kids in such a powerful way. And we all know the power of theater to spark conversation and be provocative and challenge us in the way that we think. And theater for young people is a great opportunity to encourage them to think that way or to think differently. And so I think for me, writing Reframe, which really at the core of it is the theme of difference. And how do we talk about difference? How do we celebrate difference? And how do I honor? And as Keith said, how can we still be friends, even if your difference looks different than my difference? That was really important to me. And I think part of that crazy year helped fuel the kind of thoughts and ideas and dialogue that I was trying to create.
Great. Clara, how about you? How did the pandemic influence how you wrote?
It felt very much like there was an imperative to give people tools to deal with all of the big emotions that we were having. But very specifically, a scene got added to the play, specifically addressing the pandemic and some of the things that the students were experiencing having to do school virtually. So it very directly impacted the length of the play and by adding that whole other scene and a whole other coping mechanism and all of that, just to help give, especially because this play, Monster of Mine, is primarily for the kindergartners and first graders as sort of the target age. And so trying to give these youngest kids some tools and their parents some tools to cope with all of the things that we were all feeling, because it wasn't just the kids having the big feelings. And we have, it's been lovely to hear back that some of the parents and teachers have been able to incorporate using some of these techniques with their classes, either virtually or as we've been able to sort of trickle back into in-person experiences as well. They've been able to use these things they've seen in the play, which is delightful for me to hear.
Great. Keith, how about you?
One thing writing in COVID did was I didn't really have an excuse not to write. It's like, well, I've got so many. No, I really don't. I should write, I guess. But that was also a gift. I really did try to find gifts in COVID. And one gift was, first of all, being asked to do this, because it was like, we have to, as Stage 1, have to do something artistic, and still being able to be artistic and make theater was such a gift. And then it was to be able to write like Clara and Jada were both saying, being able to write about what's happening right now. So I was conscious that I wanted to keep the actors safe. I wanted to, when people were watching it, they weren't wondering, well, why are they so close? You know, because we were right in the middle of it when we were writing it. But I also wanted to say, even though we can't be physically close, we can still care about each other. We can still listen to each other. We can still help each other through things. So I was really glad to be able to write the story that's about, even in proximity, feeling isolated. So what does that mean if you actually are isolated? And also being able to show people how you can come together, which I think was common throughout the plays, was that here's a problem, it's a big problem, but here are some solutions before we go.
Well, and speaking of coming together, when you wrote these plays, did you know that they would end up being filmed rather than traveling directly to elementary schools? And did that change how you wrote them? So, Clara, what about you?
We were delightfully naive when we first began the process of writing these, thinking, I mean, we'll probably be in schools, but there's an outside chance we may have to film them. So we did know that it was a possibility. But I certainly, having been a touring actor, touring into schools, was very conscious as I was writing of precisely how many props and set pieces I was asking these actors to haul in and out of schools every day, which ended up not being a thing because they ended up filming. So it was an idea in the back of our heads, but I was thinking more in terms of, lugging day after day after day, lugging these set pieces in and out. How can I craft something that will inform the designers to be gentle with the actors?
Yeah. Keith, did it change the way you wrote it at all?
I really didn't think about, this is going to be filmed. I didn't want it to, I didn't want to set it up, to stage it. And in the case of Monster Mind, to direct it such that everything happens and you're facing forward all the time. I wanted it to be naturalistic. And if it's going to be filmed, let the professional, cinematographers and videographers figure out how to make that work, and be flexible if they say, can they stand over here, or can they do this again, or whatever it is. I was fortunate enough to be working in another theater where everybody was pivoting all at once. And so this theater said, all right, we have this one piece we can film. And I sort of learned on the spot how to, so this is how editing works. And this is how we do this shot. And this is how we do this shot, so that when it's, so I'm thinking about where will the camera be? So I had a little bit of that head start, but it didn't inform the whole thing. I knew we weren't making a film, we were making a play that needed to feel like this is live theater, but we happen to be the eyes of the audience and catch it as though we were the audience.
Great. And Jada, how about you?
Yeah, I too am a product of being an actor, of touring in schools. And so I think what was most important for me is to do our best to maintain the sense of live theater. And the beauty of how do we keep the honesty and the truth and ensure we are generating or creating a high level of audience engagement and opportunity for participation, whether they were sitting in the theater with us or whether they were exploring us across a screen. And I think just being able to still keep the focus on let's write for theater was super helpful. So it didn't shift how I showed up in terms of writing.
Good. And Janna, let me throw this question at you. Did you keep it in mind as you were helping them develop their stories or shape their direction?
Yeah, I mean, we initially had hoped, because we were so young and naive at the beginning of this, that we would be able to go into schools in the fall, but obviously that didn't happen. So it was sort of putting in a lot of hypotheticals, a lot of contingency plans, and having stage directions that were either or, right? Like it could be done this way or it could be done that way. And lots of moments for that, but always with an eye to, even if it is filmed, it will still be done as a theater show. It will not be a TV show, right? It will be filmed theater, but it will still be live theater. And that was really crucial.
Great.
So, yeah.
So this were targeted very much towards an elementary audience. So Keith, do you write differently when you're writing for young people as opposed to writing for adults?
It's funny because when I first started acting at Stage One, Andrew Harris, the artistic director, when I was cast in Best Christmas Pageant, said, don't act down to the kids. Be for real, because the kids will see that you're acting down to them. And so when I was writing the play, I said, don't write down. Write honestly. Write the truth of the kids, and they will go with you. But if you say, and then this happened, they'll be like, okay, I call foul on this whole thing. Because kids now are so sophisticated. They really, because they're expected to be, because I have to program a phone and I have to figure out how a computer works and I have to be on Instagram. Now I gotta get this video up on TikTok. And I've got to do all of this really intricate stuff. And so they know what's going on in the world because they have such access to the world all the time. Even young kids, even elementary school kids. So if you write something that seems like it's too young for them or that you don't value their intelligence, they will let you know. They will let you know by being bored with what you do, or literally just by saying, boo. So you don't want that. So you really want to make sure that you're writing the truth, whether it's for grown-ups or for young people.
How about you, Clara? Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I believe, Keith, was that the year that you and I were husband and wife in Christmas Pageant ever? Yeah, we've acted together numerous times. Oh, it was so much fun. Yes, I agree. Kids will call foul on you faster than an adult audience. Absolutely. And, you know, I think it was not terribly different for me for a couple of reasons. One is that the techniques that I was trying to communicate through the piece are going to be the same regardless of the age of the person practicing these techniques for dealing with the big emotions. But then, so the wording or the way you frame it might be a little bit different, just because they're going to have different life experiences as a 5-year-old versus a 45-year-old who might be in the yoga room with me. But it was so focused on solving some problems for the school system, because our educational consultant, Susan French, she had a delightful conversation, nice long conversation where she walked me through some of the situations that they deal with that they were hoping this some of this could address anyway, and or give them some tools to address. And so I had some very specific situations, real life situations that I was addressing. And I've always been a big proponent of, you know, kids are still humans. They're just small humans. So yeah, don't talk down to them, and deal with them on the human level.
Yeah. Jada, I see you nodding your head a lot.
Yeah, it's so true. In one of my touring days, told these guys once before, in one of my touring shows, we're out there performing our hearts out for this elementary school audience. And from the back of the room, out of nowhere, some kid yells, "Boring." It's like, okay, thank you for sharing your truth. And so I always use that as a marker. As both Keith and Clara have said, you can't talk down. You still want the story to be interesting. And I think we're writers. So we're used to writing like a full story, a story that has an arc, characters that we care about, characters that pull us in, themes that are challenging and that we want to explore how we can apply in our lives. So I would agree. I don't think it's any different, other than maybe, yeah, the utilization of language or the type of language might shift or change, but it doesn't shift how you show up in terms of creating a story that moves people.
Great. Great. Well, your stories were full of very rich characters. So if you could play any character that you created for this, which character would it be? Jada, why don't you keep going? Start us off.
Okay, well, so I'm a little torn because in Reframe, there is a character named Mrs. Big Hair Don't Care. And I would certainly love to do that because she's crazy and kooky and just way out there. And I really want to wear one of the monster costumes. Mostly because I just want to wear it around my house and scare my family. Or maybe that's my new expression of my emotions when I wear one of the monster costumes.
And Keith, how about you?
As much as I would love to have any hair, let alone big hair, I was really, like I say, as I was writing The Right Shoes, I realized I was writing three parts of me as a kid. I was, writing the kid who had to be in control. I was writing the new kid who didn't know what to do. I was writing the kid who was always excited, a little bit too excited. So all those kids are me, but mostly the kid who's me is Jason, because he's just super excited. And when people say, shh, sit down, be quiet, he goes, why aren't you excited? How do you keep that in? I'm very excited to do this, or I'm very upset about what's happened, or I don't understand. Like, he was the one who was sort of speaking truth to power. He was like, okay, the emperor has no clothes here. And as a kid, I wanted to be that kid, but I was like, shh, don't say anything. Ixnay on the O's clay. So I was like, okay, I won't do anything. But, now if I went back, I went, Jason, you tell them that they're being mean. You tell them right now. So I'd be that kid for sure.
You would look great in a SpongeBob shirt, no doubt.
I like to think so.
Yeah,
I like to think so.
Yeah.
Why do you think I put him in there?
Clara, you have all sorts of monsters and other characters. Who would you choose?
Yep. Well, I would love to play Mrs. Big Hair Don't Care. She seems like a lot of fun. But if I were choosing, something that I wrote, probably Board Monster, but mostly because the inspiration for that is Martha Graham's Lamentation Dance, which, if you don't know it, Google it. It's amazing. So the whole inspiration behind how to realize or manifest the sense of being bored, especially that sort of overwhelming bored that we were getting midway through the pandemic when we realized we were not getting out of our houses, is so I have many connections to both that sensation, but also that the Lamentations Martha Graham dances is very significant to me. So I would probably choose that monster. Although, it's not one of the big furry ones.
Yeah. Well, you're right. 2020 was a very long year. What was the most rewarding part of writing in 2020? Clara, you're on a roll. Why don't you go?
Well, I think, was it you, Keith, that said just getting to be artistic and tell stories and still work in the theater in a year that we were all confined to our houses and certainly locked out of the theaters because we couldn't come together in groups. That was really, really phenomenal. And I think too, just, having something that you could say, you know what, it wasn't all bad. There were some really lovely things that did come out of it. And this was certainly one of the, putting an asterisk by it and a gold star kind of highlights.
And Jada?
Yeah, I think that's super great. As artists, I think 2020, many of us looked up and so many doors had closed. And that was a little bit like, now what? And then this beautiful nugget and opportunity came about. So I think I would agree with Clara, the opportunity to continue to create art and to create stories. And I also would add the true pleasure of being in the writer's room with Clara and Keith and Janna, and just this collaborative process that we had was super, super great.
Yeah. And Keith?
For me, to echo, just being able to do art in this time, and the learning curve of 2020 was basically just a straight up and down. Like, it wasn't even a slight arc. It was just like, learn this. So I learned so much in so short a time. I learned, all right, you have to write a play. You have to write a play really quickly. You have to write a play that might tour. You have to write a play about this particular thing, and you still have to make it interesting. And you have to also direct a play. Why don't you? And it was kind of like, we have this much time to do it, but it still has to be really good. And I said, okay, I can do that. And what it taught me, the 2020, I'd make a whole list of like positive things that came from COVID. One of the things it taught me is that, all of those years of being an actor and being a director and watching people work and reading scripts and being that person all came to fruition in this process, because I could think like an actor when I was directing. I could think like a director when I was writing. So all the things I'd done culminated in this moment that it's like, okay, then go ahead and do it. And then we were all able to do that. I just want to, as a shout out, I've never had a dramaturg for anything I'd written before. And Janna Segal would not just like give a couple of notes. She would write a thesis every draft. She'd be like, here's this packet of, and you'd go, what, you really thought about this?
Yeah.
This is more pages than my play. This is great. And it was always, and she was like, if she thought something didn't work, she didn't go, this doesn't work. She'd go, I wonder if instead and I was like, and so I've stolen, or what if is what you'd say, what if? And so I've stolen what if. I'd be like, what if, and so I just wanted to throw that huge amount of appreciation to you, that working back and forth was just terrific.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I, this was an unbelievable, lovely, wonderful process. And I feel so very fortunate to get to be in these various worlds and all in the same world at the same time. Like it was magical. And I'm incredibly grateful to each of the playwrights and to Stage One. Going back to that question of how do you write differently for TYA versus adult plays, and I really want to, I guess, tip my hat to the fact that Stage One recognized that you don't write differently, right? Both are written with the same level of integrity, and that includes bringing in a dramaturg for new plays. That's absolutely essential to the new play development process, and treating new plays and TYA plays with the same amount of integrity as equal beings in an equal theatrical landscape. I just think was fantastic to see, and I'm so glad that Stage One is on the forefront of that and knows that to be fundamentally true. TYA is equal to all theater.
Yeah. I'm going to cut in here because we have a couple questions from the audience that we'd love to try to fit in. So the first one is, if you could write a sequel or another Theater for Everywhere piece, what would it be?
I would find out what happened to the three kids in the right shoes, and either in high school or college, like after they've gotten this moment, and how this moment in time and what they learned that they took with them. Because I'm always curious when I watch kids, it's like, you're going through this right now. I wonder what part of this you're going to take with you and go, when I was 8, this happened and I learned this. So I'm hoping that they all learn tolerance. That's what I'm hoping.
Nice. Clara?
Well, I think I would explore how the students evolve as they get older and how they're able to continue utilizing and maybe expanding on and growing as they continue to practice the techniques to deal with big emotions, how that continues to hopefully enrich their lives. But yeah, I think it would be fun to sort of explore what happens as they get a little bit older and as their problems change and develop. Because as I said, really the biggest difference between teaching these techniques and writing for kids and doing any, producing plays, being an actor for a TYA piece, the biggest difference is the life experiences that the audience has, right? The kids are going to have different experiences than the adults are going to have, just because the number of years they've been walking the earth. So it'd be fun to sort of explore how that continues to grow and develop as they get older and have those new experiences.
Yeah. Jada, I'm going to actually ask you another question. What advice would you give to emerging playwrights?
Oh, man. Really? That is a great question. I guess I would say write, and keep writing. Read as many scripts as you can find, whether that's plays, whether that's screenplays. And I think get in class or find a writing buddy, but literally write every day without, oh my gosh, it should be this, or I should go back and edit. No, just write. And I'm saying that out loud as a response to the question, but also as a reminder to myself, because I know we all, especially as artists, can get so super critical. But it's really just about continuing to do it.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. Got to let those creative juices flow.
Let them flow.
But also get a dramaturg. Oh, sorry. I got in there.
Yes.
If you're 8, you need a dramaturg today.
But not just any dramaturg.
Janna, what was it like being a dramaturg for 3 shows simultaneously?
Ooh.
I was actually working on 6. So, to be honest, and it was so great. It was so awesome. So I was working on these 3, and then I was doing some other projects as well. It was great. Like, the world outside was terrible, and I had these beautiful worlds to enter into, and to help cultivate, right, and to respond to. And it was joyful. I was so grateful, really so grateful. And yeah, it was a gift. It was a gift. And the 3 plays in the Theater for Everywhere series were organically just linked up and thematically shared these wonderful through lines. That was a very organic process. So in some ways they're in the same world, but they're also, 3 distinct plays as well. Sorry, my cat wanted to join in on that conversation. But yeah, it was great, joyful.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, well, that's about all we have time for tonight. So thank you. And thank you especially to Clara, Jada, Keith, and Janna for sharing your discoveries and process. And thank you for the sponsors for Theater for Everywhere. You made this exciting process possible. For those of you at home, if you haven't seen Theater for Everywhere, it's available for streaming purchase until June 2nd. So check it out today to learn more about what we've been talking about tonight. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.